that yet. So Colonel Price is here, and Spry is...
We're here.
Oh, my God, he got closer.
General.
General. Okay, we will begin the meeting. Once again, it's just been, for the most part, a pleasure working with everybody here in this, and you guys should feel real good about yourself. This has been a, are we getting too good at this? Well, I don't know if we'll ever get too good, but this has been an exercise in, there's been some frustrations here or there, but the bottom line is we're progressing forward, and we're in excellent shape to meet the crisis of 2013. And if we continue for the next few days, hopefully we'll get through this and so forth. So I'm very confident. Pat, do you want to start the...
Yes. Good morning. I think we'll start with Mark Yunes from the National Weather Service. If, Mark, you could come up to the podium, please. Maybe you can give us what the latest is.
And then you got to put something in terms I can understand. Mark has been a friend and a scientist, as far as I'm concerned, the National Weather Service for a long time. And one of the new things that came out this year was that the water can actually go in the ground and come back up again. I guess that needs to be explained to some extent. So, Mark.
Well, thank you, Mayor. You've already done my job for me. You said we're fine, so thank you very much. Let me start with the water thing. It's actually something we've seen in the past. A lot of us were talking about the drought and how, well, we're going to be in really good shape because we had such a significant drought last year. About a 4-inch deficit in the southern Red River Valley. That was true. We look at the snowfall over the winter, particularly in the higher drought area, and there was generally 6 to 8 inches of water equivalent. Well, that melted and that went in the ground, so we're looking good. We restored that deficit. What happens now is the frost is coming out, and through some processes that we don't fully understand, all of a sudden that water is coming back up to the surface. Happens quite often. We've seen it before, and we're seeing it this year. I was down in Wilkin County a couple of days ago touring with Tom Rickles. It was very dry. Things were looking good. He calls me the next day and says there's water flowing everywhere. And all of a sudden the otter tail by his place has shot up a foot. So it's a process. We also saw driving down this morning as I was coming in from Grand Forks, fields that had been empty yesterday now have water all over them. So it's something we have to keep in mind that does happen. Although the water did go on the ground, it's not uncommon for it to come back up. And that is in part responsible for the rises we're now seeing in the basin. The other side of the coin, of course, is there's still a fair amount of snow melt left to come. Not as much, obviously, not quite the crisis situation it was in 09 or 11, but there still is a lot of water. And with the temperatures forecast to rise so nicely, we're finally going to have spring. This forecast guaranteed, your next one's free. So now that we're going to have spring, we're going to see that runoff increase dramatically. And so that's going to cause the rivers to take a jump. In speaking with the River Forecast Center this morning, the current forecasts that are posted on our webpage are still good. There may be some minor revisions here or there depending on how the water comes in. As we all know, it depends on what happens, especially with the wild rice, and points to the east. The Cheyenne at the moment probably will not be an immediate major player since that snow was a little later and that has yet to absorb in. So the impacts may be mitigated somewhat that way. As Mayor Wallaker said, currently the weather forecast is for relatively light precipitation. 2 days ago, the computer models were showing significant rain in the valley. So until we get a better handle on this system, we just need to keep watching this and hope that the system continues to migrate a little farther north. Are there any questions?
Some people talk about the water going in, the water coming out, and the fact of tiling and drainage. What does tiling and drainage have to do in the fields?
That I can't really address because that's something that we really don't understand the implications. We've seen this prior to the widespread distribution of the tiling. We've seen it in several of the previous larger floods as well. Saw it in 97, we saw it a degree in 2006, and then we saw it in 09. So I think this is something more that has to do with the hydrostatics of the valley itself, the way that the clay, once the clay begins to thaw and expand, that water comes up. I'm not an engineer. Perhaps I can get help from some of the engineering folks, but talking with the hydrology people and what I learned going to this college up here on the north side of town, they said the clay here acts like a sponge and does a great job of absorbing it, but it also gets squeezed as it starts to warm up. So that's basically what we're seeing.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, as far as the National Weather Service is concerned, I think, my position to be skeptical and so forth, and then maybe that transfers too far into the general public and so forth. But it's our viewpoint that as far as the flood crests are concerned, we have to build to whatever they say. Okay, that's a given. Okay. And number two is, if it doesn't get there, that's good. That's not a bad thing, and so forth. And Mark has been a mainstay for me for a long, long time. And do I understand everything he does? I don't think so. Anybody that looks at the Arctic Circle and talks about the weather, but he will agree with me, anything beyond 24 hours is strictly a guess and so forth, and things can change. That's why flood forecasting is so dynamic. It can change overnight. So right now, most of us that have been here for a while are looking at 37 to 38 feet. If it gets to 38 feet, it'll be the 5th highest flood on record, okay? So all the procrastinators out there, including myself, have to understand when we see the increases where the river has started. So they're talking maybe 4 or 5 feet in a day. So our dikes, the majority of them are placed. The big 2 ones down here are going to start sometime this afternoon or Saturday morning. So
Colonel Mike Price from the Corps of Engineers. You want
Morning.
to give us a update on what's taking place with the Corps?
Right now, we're waiting for the river to come up to provide us the ability to do the main levees. We'll start those this evening. We'll get, it is Friday, so people want to move about. So we'll wait for all the traffic signals getting placed, and then we'll start this evening sometime. And it'll be a short build.
Good.
And we'll start in the north and then work towards the south.
Good, thank
do
you.
you have 2 contractors, one working on the north of
We have 2
First Avenue
contractors,
and
one on the
working
north and one on the south. So we have 2 pits. So once they start rolling, it'll be a quick build and independent of each other. So
General Spritznatic?
So that's going to be, Colonel Price, that's going to be over the weekend, right?
that's correct.
So
We'll-
people in downtown area have to be a little careful that we're going to have some trucks coming in, right?
That's right. And I'd like to acknowledge the National Guard. They're doing a great job doing traffic control and letting the trucks do what they need to do. And just everyone be careful. You see these big trucks rolling out of the way.
One comment about the National Guard. There was a period of time in our history where I thought, having the Guard here would be a negative. But I'll tell you what, as far as I'm concerned, they are a positive, because after that event, order became predominant and so forth. And it's been a good experience working with the National Guard.
He thought people would be more worried, General. It wasn't that it was negative that he had the team here. but-
Thank you for that explanation. Well, good morning, everyone. The Governor Dalrymple sends his regards. As everyone still is aware, the legislature is hard at it. They start every morning about 7:30, and hopefully they'll wrap their business up in a couple of days, and the governor will be able to be here as well. We continue to provide support to the community. We've got about 75 of our soldiers and airmen that are involved, mostly involved in the traffic control points. And, I ask people as they, drive through the town and see our Guard soldiers and airmen out there to, slow down. And if they point you to a certain direction, please, please follow their direction. We expect to bring on about another 50 on Sunday, and they'll be coming on to support the county as we deploy a couple of our quick reaction forces. And then a little later on in the middle of next week, we'll probably bring on about another 25 or so. So at this point, it looks like we may not have more than about 150 soldiers and airmen on state active duty engaged in the flood fight. And part of the reason why the number is low is that, we've become so efficient and so good at it, sad to say, because of all the experience. But the other thing you'll see is last year, Mayor, as you recall, we stationed a couple of our helicopters here. You'll see more activity with the Blackhawks that are stationed in Fargo. And then the Air Force is going to bring in a couple of helicopters to help in the event of a need for any search or rescue. So we'll continue to support you, the city, the county, all of the counties and cities for that matter, as far as the flood fight goes and anything you might need.
Thank you. Dr. Andy McLean, you got any more words of wisdom for us today?
Well, we'll see. I'll be the judge. The first thing is, it's human nature when there's good news to just run with it, and it's all good news, but people need to, maintain vigilance and don't be complacent. We're not through this yet, but the good news is certainly a great thing. The other thing is, during times of stress, ritual symbols, those are very important for people in communities. In the paper this morning, there was a comment about lost wedding rings, which just goes to show how important symbols can be. In 2009, excuse me, a group called Red River Resilience was formed to help communities, and they came up with the idea of flood-strong bracelets, wristbands, and those have been shared here. They've been shared in Minot. They've been shared actually in different parts of the world. The group met recently, and we're talking about, do we reorder some, or do we just finish up with those that we have left over? There are 125 flood-strong bracelets left, and what they decided they would like to do is to just ask people to here, go ahead and take one. There are some leaders who were not here a couple of years ago. I'll leave them here in the chairs out front. Go ahead and take one. But you can keep it or you can pay it forward. If you see someone that you appreciate, that you're happy with how they've helped, pay it forward. Maybe they can wear it for a bit and pay it forward again. So,
Thank you. Appreciate that very much. County, Keith.
Hey, morning, Pat. I guess this morning our county engineer Jason Benson's going to give a little update on things in the field, and then Dr. Bennett's going to has a few words too. My only comment was, we've talked about the Coast Guard helicopters and the Air Force helicopters, and now I'm just thinking the Navy's got some really good choppers too. I'd feel a lot better about those.
All right, good morning.
Member, I'm sure.
With our clay levees, we're continuing to build those down south in the Forest River, 76th Avenue area. We have deployed about 140,000 sandbags out to the rural areas, both south and north of Fargo along the Red River. As Mark described, there is a little bit of better news on the Cheyenne River with a downgrade at Kindred of 17 feet, so a few less breakouts along that area south of town, and then up north of town at 890 in Harwood, and at 890 that's when we really see a lot of breakouts over Cass County 17 and where we see a lot of people get isolated. So we want to continue to press, it's right on that edge of where people will be isolated, so for people along the Cheyenne to be vigilant and be prepared, and we'll be delivering sandbags in those areas today and tomorrow as well. And that's all I have to report.
I think we have to remind our people that we have in the county about 600 miles of road and about 300 bridges. And we start closing roads and bridges at 28 feet. So there's a lot of, or thousands of drivers in the county that are new drivers or inexperienced drivers. And many of them have never driven in any snow other than a half of an inch of rainfall. And many of them like to go around barriers. We'd like to warn them that if you go across and move a barrier or barricade today, it's $250 fine. We find people getting around barriers and we have to pull them out and waste time and they injure their lives. I think the people have to recognize too that a vehicle can get stalled in 6 inches of water. And in a foot of water, it can be floating. And in 2 feet of water, you can be, and if it's rushing, you can be taken downstream with your vehicle. And so these are the things that happen in the county, and we have to warn people to be particularly cautious. Everybody likes to try to see how their vehicle can go through water. You never know when you're going through water that it might be washed out somewhere in the middle of the place that you're trying to cross. And so this has been a problem for us every year with flooding, and we want people to be very cautious of this and to recognize that even though we're happy over the fact that the crest is not going to be as high as it could be, there's still problems starting at 28 feet out in the county that you have to be aware of. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, today is going to be a busy day for sandbag placement, and so I'm going to call on Jim Gilmore from the Planning Office, who's coordinating the student volunteers. And Jim, do you want to give us a schedule, please?
Yeah, we'll have 1,400 students from Fargo Public High Schools out this morning. In addition, we'll have Oak Grove High School is sandbagging a couple homes in that neighborhood. They'll be leaving Fargo North and Fargo South both at about 9:15. In the Woodcrest addition, they'll be arriving about 9:30. In Elm Circle, South River Road, and they'll be arriving also about 9:30. Other 9:30 arrivals from Fargo South will be in that Southwood Drive area and the Harwood Groves and River Drive South, also Woodrow Wilson schools involved. Davies High Schools will be getting to Copperfield Court about 10 o'clock with 400 students. And so there'll be a lot of people out by 10 o'clock. The school district is sending food along on board, and also that's being supported by both the Red Cross and the Salvation Army, additional food. So we'll have plenty of food and water out in the neighborhoods. They'll be taking direction from firefighters and engineers at those sites. So if all goes well, we could be done by lunchtime, but we'll have to wait and see.
Thank you. Maybe Mayor Wallaker or Commissioner Mahoney, there are a few neighbors' homes that would like to do it on their own, and so can you maybe speak to that a little bit about the need to have everything sort of wrapped up, though, by the time we have the crest available?
Trouble a lot of people don't understand is when you do a line of defense, that you are dependent on every home and every line. And the problem is if we have one compromised sewer, that can compromise that whole neighborhood. So as much as people want to wait and see how high the water gets, I drove past 27 today, it's coming up, and we always get a little more anxious as the water comes a little higher, and then we say, yeah, this is real. This is real. Like Dennis said, the 38 feet is the fifth highest flood we've had for a while. So if you have some reluctance to sign, we have volunteers in the field, and when we did the neighborhood meetings, commissioners, we all went out and did the neighborhood meetings. They all said, hey, we're getting tired of sandbagging, bring some volunteers in. And as superintendent says, the kids are excited, and the thing that Denny really likes is they bring energy, and they can have it done by noon or by 3 this afternoon. We're all tucked in. And people have to remember in this community, that's a great feeling to be tucked in. You know, when I take my son at night and put him down to bed and tuck him in, you know, he feels secure and safe, and that's really what we want to do. So, Andy, our term for the day is tuck us in.
Got it.
Thank you. The other piece of the puzzle for our protection, of course, are some of the earth and levee construction. April Walker, do you want to give us a schedule on that, please?
Sure. The earth levee construction has been proceeding. I've got a pretty lengthy list of things that are done. I won't go through all of that, but we'll let you know that Oak Street is done, Lindenwood is done, and then there's various small earth levees and plugs that have been completed by the Corps. As the Colonel indicated, we are getting close to starting on 2nd Street. We anticipate that south of Main Avenue, it will begin on Saturday morning, and north of Main Avenue, it can begin potentially even Friday night. In addition, there's another crew out there that's working at the VA hospital, and then it's going to move up to 32nd Avenue North and wrap around the lift station that we have up there. So everything's, I mean, we've got a lot done. We're excited to be approaching the point where we can start on 2nd Street, because that's a big, we know that 30 feet, that one goes under, so it's nice to see it get started and get built. We are also proceeding, still filling in the lots that have been, where houses have been removed, and getting close to finishing that area off. And in addition to that, the trap bag installation is complete, except for if we decide to do any more in the neighborhoods that we'll be working in Saturday.
Good. Thank you. Two critical pieces to the infrastructure of the city, of course, is the water and the sewer plant, that if either one of those are compromised, then the whole city could be compromised. I want to call on Bruce Grubb, but maybe you can give us what elevations we're protected to and how things are going.
Sure, thanks, Pat. We do have individual contingency protection plans for both the water treatment plant and wastewater treatment plant, and those were put together kind of in a hurry in 2009. We actually implemented those contingency plans, and those had isolated protection to 45 feet. Right now, the 4th Street levee that protects the water plant, I believe, has protection to 41 feet. So at this point, each of those plans has certain action items that occur based on river elevations, and we've already implemented some of those lower level action items, and we're waiting for the city. When the city pulls the trigger on contingency protection in certain neighborhoods in the city, we're prepared to pull the contingency protection for the plants. But at this point, we're not anticipating having to do that. But with the exception of clay levee work, all the materials are on site at both locations, and we're in a wait and see.
Bruce, why don't you just expound a little bit about the lift station that we have placed on Cass County 20 that can divert significant runoff to the lagoon?
Well, one of the things that we've accomplished with infrastructure improvements over the last several years is a new third interceptor that has the ability to, rather than try run all of the wastewater through the wastewater treatment plant, we have the ability to divert large volumes of water directly up to our lagoons, and that has provided a lot of additional wet weather capacity to our system. We've made some other improvements too along the east side of the city through the El Zagle Bowl area and others. So right now, normally in a spring melt like this, we would see much higher flows than we're seeing at the wastewater treatment plant. So we're cautiously optimistic that some of these improvements have had a big impact for us.
So what is the wastewater million gallons per day right now?
It was, I believe, 14.5 yesterday, which is on the lower end of typical spring runoff melt. So we're happy about that.
Thank you.
Leon Schlafman, why don't you give us the emergency numbers once again? Just
Okay, Pat. The EOC is up and running and ready to support all the operations for everybody that has spoken here today. We make sure that we are coordinating with all the departments, agencies, to make sure that everything runs smooth. EOC and the Emergency Operations Center this weekend will probably be throwing out a few code reds into certain neighborhoods as informational content only, so don't be alarmed if you do get a code red in your neighborhoods, but realize that some might be coming out.
well, just more specific to that is that we're going to be seeking some neighborhood help. There's one neighborhood, Oak Creek and Copperfield, where we can't have the students in today, and so we're going to do it tomorrow. And so a code red in that neighborhood will be done to seek volunteers from the neighborhoods.
And the other phone numbers that you should be aware of are, if there is any emergency situations that affect property or life, make sure that you call 911. Any information as far as property goes, you can dial 476-4199. And of course, we always look forward to 476-4000 for any of those volunteers.
Thank you. Chief Turnus, maybe you can just speak a little bit to the safety issues of clay levees and people wanting to run up on top of them, take pictures and that sort of thing.
Don't do it. No, actually, from a policing perspective, over the last several days, things are really business as usual throughout the community, which I suppose in many ways under the circumstances is good news. But as the sandbag placement begins today, there'll be some traffic control measures in those neighborhoods. Of course, we want to keep just general traffic to a minimum. But once the levees and other flood protection works are in place, yeah, we certainly want to and need to remind people to stay off of those protective works. It's more than just keeping sightseers out of there. The last thing we want to do is have somebody tumble into the water, and then we have to we have to utilize rescue methods to get them back out. And then, of course, there's always the risk of damaging the work unintentionally. So it's just best if we can just get people's cooperation to just stay off of those flood protection works.
Is there anything else anybody else wants to add?
Well, Chief, I think that if people are going to volunteer on Saturday in the Oak Creek area, you probably would want them to park in the Centennial area if they're going to, and then walk into the neighborhood rather than drive into the neighborhood.
Well, that certainly would be helpful, of course, is if we can keep as many motor vehicles and the accompanying traffic out of those neighborhoods. I'm sure that would be beneficial, give people a lot more room to work. So, yes, in those areas, parking in or near Centennial would be helpful.
Well, this concludes the meeting for this morning. We will have a news conference afterwards. On Monday, the City Commission will take up flood issues at their regular meeting, so that'll be the next public broadcast meeting that we'll have. And if we need to have any more meetings, we will alert you to it early next week. I'd like to, again, thank Colonel Price for coming and your staff. I see Judy's here. And General Spritzinatic and your staff, thank you for coming this morning. And so if there's not any more comments, we'll have a news conference and carry on.
Thank you.